Hello, hello. You're listening to the Better Workday podcast with me, Niamh Moynihan. We can track everything these days, from our steps to our sleep and even our time. But the question is that tracking helping our workday or is it causing unnecessary stress? So me and Trish decided to put it to the test. We both tracked our time for a week. And in this episode, we are going to share what we learned. So let's get into it. Hey Trish, how are you doing?
I am good. Thank you very much. Glad to be back.
Yes. And of course, at the time recording, you are back from yet another little trip away. So every time you seem to come on the podcast, you're just back from a trip. What a life, huh?
That makes me sound like I have a much more elaborate lifestyle than I actually do. But yes, I did enjoy a little weekend away for myself.
Yes, well, that is nice. But before you went away, you did track your time, yeah? So we
I did.
both decided to track our time for a week. I did a week. Did you do a week?
So I technically did 2.
Okay.
So just put a little bit of context on it. I am required to track a certain amount of my time for work anyway. So I just paid a bit more attention to what I was doing in week 1. And then in week 2, and we'll get into this in a second, I did what I used to do when I first
Okay.
started in my role a decade ago.
Okay. Really, really good. So if you're listening to the podcast today, I suppose, and you don't track your time for work, I suppose it's kind of worth considering that some people, obviously they have to track their time as part of the job, time against certain projects, certain clients, and all that kind of stuff. And so there's an element to that already. But I suppose what we're looking at here is, everything, including that and beyond. So the whole scope of the workday. And it's interesting because I did mine for a week and I would have always recommended that people track their time every now and again just for visibility. But it felt different again for me this time around as well. It's so funny how things change over time. So what were you hoping to find out from the exercise? So was it just purely to see, was it helpful or not? Or did you have any particular goal?
There was 2 sides of it. One was more, since you and I had been discussing the topic, was more of a personal exploration for myself. How I've tracked my time has changed in the 10 years that I've been doing my job. And so I wanted to see if that was a change for the good or a change for the bad. Was it actually better my old way? And the second was more so for my own benefit, in the sense that I sometimes suffer from what people generally refer to as time blindness,
Okay.
where I lose track of time or I don't realize how much time things take in general. And I wanted to see if that's actually a thing that I actually have an issue with, or if it's a thing I perceive I have an issue with, which sounds really weird. Well, I'll put it this way. I might put in, I estimate a task will take 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes feel I took half an hour. But did I actually only take 15 minutes? And I was actually right. It's just because how I perceive time is a bit weird.
Yeah, and I don't think you're the only one who would have issues with time perception. In fact, when we do workshops and webinars and stuff, it's probably the thing that comes up most. As humans, I suppose we look at things we enjoy and we think that time goes by really, really fast. We look at things we don't enjoy, we think the time drags on those. And then even things like interruptions and stuff like that. So, even if you did spend 15 minutes technically on task, if you got interrupted a bit, it could feel like a bit longer. So I think time blindness is something we all suffer from every now and again. But definitely, I suppose that's one thing that time tracking can help allay your concerns with, Yeah, for me, I suppose I was wondering, could I still track my time? Because once upon a time, I was really, really focused on it. There are so many ways that you can track your time. There's all these apps, you can do pen and paper, you can do a spreadsheet. And so for a long time, I would have been obsessed with trying to find the optimal way. Then I kind of abandoned it completely. So I was just curious to see, yeah, could I restart that habit for a week, which was interesting enough. But so kind of coming back to the time blindness thing. So what was the biggest gap between what you thought was true about your week or the 2 weeks and what actually happened? So did you see any difference there? Did you see anything that was a surprise or unexpected?
So the one thing that became apparent in both ways that I did it, and we'll go into a bit more detail later on about how I did the 2 different ways, but was that I actually need to trust myself more
Okay.
because my estimates were fairly accurate for the most part. But the thing that I need to give myself grace on is the interruptions and stuff. So again, going back to, I expect that setting up this project is going to take 15 minutes. Actually, on average, it took about 15 minutes. I was right. It's just that I had emails pop up in the middle of it and I had to go to the toilet and then we broke
Yeah.
for lunch and whatever. So it felt longer, but the actual work was 15 minutes. So my estimate was right, but I need to reconsider then, and this is something that I'm sure we'll get into later on. Do I need to reframe my estimate to be realistic of life rather than this task from beginning to end with no interruptions takes 15 minutes?
Yeah.
'Cause that's how long it took. So I was right. But the reason my perception was skewed was because I'm not a computer.
Or a washing machine, because I always use the washing machine analogy for
Mm,
this. So, like there's a difference between the cycle time,
mm,
which is the technical amount of time to do a task, and the time to complete. So the cycle time could be 15 minutes, the time to complete could be 40 minutes. And I think when we are so focused on trying to be, perfectly productive, we can hold ourselves to that standard of cycle time and not allow the wiggle room in the day, especially when you're time tracking. I know that like people can feel guilty, if their time tracking isn't perfect because things didn't go as planned as they thought they would be. So there's definitely something to be kind of worried about. Well, not even worried about, but just to look out for there. And tell me, so just so, if anyone listening is considering doing a bit of time tracking, what exactly or how exactly did you do it? So what did you do?
Okay, so the old school way that I did, so the way that
Yeah.
I was comparing for 10 years ago, and people might think I'm really weird, but it was my first time in a corporate job. I didn't know what I was doing, and this is what made sense to me at the time was I had a notepad and a pen, and I would write down 9:02 email. And every time I changed task, I would just write down the time and what it was. And at the end of the day or the end of the week, depending on what it was, this time I did it at the end of the day just because I was a bit more clued in to what we were doing.
Yeah.
I would then tot up how much did I spend on email, how much did I spend this particular project, how much did I spend on meetings and whatever, just to see what the total was at the end of the day. But it was
Okay.
tracked to the minute.
So let me stop you before you go into the second way,
Mm.
because that's how I just track my time. So, and like I've got all the apps, I've got tried all the different systems, but like for simplicity and for ease of doing things, I literally got an A4 page, and just like you said, when I started working on something, I wrote down the time, what I was doing, and then when I finished. So it's funny that that was what you did 10 years ago, and you think that it's, a primitive or junior way of doing it because actually that's what I did. So tell me what sophisticated option do we have? So what was your second way of
Oh, no, no.
tracking the time?
The notepad and pen wasn't the primitive way of doing it, right? Because I do think, I agree with you, notepad and pen is the superior way of doing many things.
Yeah.
What was I was doing everything to the minute. So
Okay.
9:02 email, 9:05 Slack message,
Okay.
9:12 hot chocolate break,
That's a lot.
9:14 like, and I used to do this 10 years ago. Everything was tracked to the minute because I thought that's what I had to do when I was
Mm,
reporting my time. What I did now, and what I was sort of a bit more clued into when I was doing it this time, was I still did the same thing, but it was on the key stuff I wanted to track, which is
okay.
I'm required to report what we would call like resource allocation, so available hours for production. So all my
Mhm.
production stuff, I'd write down 9:05 intake management. And then if I went to the toilet, I left it running and I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
stop to say I went to the toilet. Do you know what I mean? So that's where I changed it up a bit. And it was when I came back from the bathroom then I realized, oh, actually, you know, that didn't change that much in the time. It took me like, say, 2 minutes.
yeah.
What does 2 minutes really matter? And so that was the big difference for me was going from tracking every minute detail of my life, which helped at the time because I was new, to now being like, okay, what do I need to report my time on?
Mm.
Let's track those. And is there anything I kind of am curious to report my time on? Okay, I can track those as well. And so that was the way that I went about the two different methods.
Okay. So that's interesting because if someone's listening to this and thinking about tracking their time, I think a lot of us could get caught up into that like minute by minute time tracking, which is, again, actually, I still do it that way. So, every time I went downstairs to make a cup of tea, I did stop my clock. But also just caveat that, like, I monotask a lot. Like, I don't get pulled a lot
Mm.
because I work for myself. So I do have less interruptions and less distractions from the outside world. But if someone was looking to start tracking their time, I think, as you said, giving yourself a little bit of grace, allowing a minute or two of error, you know, will make it easier for you to track it, and also just kind of not make you feel as overwhelmed when you're going through the process. So, but yeah, I think pen and paper still wins. Like, again, there's loads of apps. I can put a link to one or two maybe in the show notes if people are interested, and they are decent enough. But what I like about the pen and paper is you're a bit more intentional about what you're doing anyway, and then it's just right there in front of you. It's on your desk, so you don't have to remember to go back and check the app and kind of do anything like that. It's just right in front of you. So I'm with you, pen and paper all the way.
Was that really a surprise for you and me, though, that pen and paper was going to
I
win?
know. We have the notebooks. We have all the notebooks, all the notebooks.
Yeah. The interesting thing, though, when we're talking about time tracking is when you were going through your week intentionally, was there a point where you were like, what am I doing? And then you started sort of judging yourself based on, well, you were meant to be working there for 4 hours and you spent 30 minutes chatting to mom on the phone. Like, did that come in for you in any way?
Yeah, I think I thought I would be immune to judgment this time around. So, again, like, I spent 14 years in corporate roles where I did a lot of time tracking. I've been out my own now for a couple of years. And so I thought, Niamh, surely, you know yourself well enough not to feel guilty or judgmental. But no, it still came in. It still came in at some point. And again, it was usually when I was doing that thing. So I'd bring Loki for a walk, or I'd bring mom, or, because I do a lot of creative work. So if I have to create a presentation for a keynote, if I'm making progress on, say, even podcast prep or anything like that, sometimes I go off and I do stuff around the house or whatever like that to let my brain breathe. And when you put that down on paper, it kind of looks like slacking off. Like,
Yeah.
even though I know what I'm doing, like, I know that the walk for 40 minutes has brought me back to being more productive and to make a better outcome of whatever it is I'm doing. When you put on paper, like 40 minutes walking, it's like, Niamh, like in the middle of the day on a Tuesday, like, did you really need to spend that much time? And also, like, I do a little bit of work in the evenings, especially when the days are dark. If it's bright outside, for my own well-being, I need to get outside in the daylight, the sunshine. So I'll always trade an hour during the day when it's bright outside for me logging on when it's dark in the evening. It's a seasonal thing I do. I've done it for years. And even though I know that's for me, I know it's my well-being, I know my work doesn't suffer, I know the well-being is good and my family doesn't suffer. When you write it down, you look at it differently, almost as if like you're like the time tracking auditor. So yeah, I think that's a good question to ask because, if people aren't used to tracking their time, it's good to call out that you need to give yourself, again, that bit of grace and consideration, and know that, nobody is productive all the time. Did you get judgmental, or have you mastered the art?
I did a bit. I felt really bad for younger me, to be honest, that I was so paranoid about it when I was younger.
Yeah,
Um, I say that as if I'm 90, but you know what I mean. When I was younger in corporate, because I would have been really anxious of, you know, I came back from lunch and then I had 5 minutes left, so I watched a YouTube video. And oh my God, the YouTube video was 10 minutes.
yeah,
I went over on my lunch. And so I would have been hyper aware of that when I was first in the role. I'm slightly less so now, but I'll tell you the reason why I'm slightly less so now is because, and I will thank my leadership on this, the way that we track our time in those projects where we have to, there's a buffer built in.
yeah,
So you are not expected to be 100% productive for the entire week. There is a variance that gets automatically added. And so knowing that variance is there and understanding how, oh, I, you know, didn't spend 8 hours of work today. I spent 7 hours and 15 minutes of work today or whatever the case may be. Because I know that the tool has variance, because it knows I'm a human, someone
Yeah.
who is working, they put that in there. So my resource allocation for the day still comes up at 100%. I was like, cool.
Okay. So that's interesting for, again, for people who are looking to track their time, because if a large multinational, global, huge organization
Hmm.
builds in buffer time
Yeah.
for the unexpected, for a break that goes a little bit over, for an extra cup of tea, then if you're tracking your time to improve how you work, then you should do the same. I mean, like, if the large, really revenue focused organizations are doing it, like, then you should definitely be doing it, right? To give yourself that grace and to not expect it to be 100%. But tell me this, so like kind of going back to the start, like, you know, in terms of what you're hoping to find out, if time tracking shows us our reality, even with the buffer time, like even with the bit of wiggle room, right? If it shows us how we actually spent our week, like, is that actually helpful? So like, did, or I suppose you're just back from a break again, but like,
Yeah.
will you be doing anything differently as a result of the exercise that we did? Or did it just kind of confirm what you already knew?
It kind of confirmed my modern approach to it,
Okay.
that what people need to know. And I have a way of tracking that, which is my pen and paper. I write down what time I started, what time I ended it, and I report that in the tool because that's needed to know for, again, scoping, resource management, all that kind of stuff. For the minutia of my day, it does not provide me any value. The week that I was doing it, I didn't get any benefit from it.
Mm,
Now, part of that could be that I've grown out of my need for it.
yeah.
I felt I needed it 10 years ago. I don't feel I need it now.
Yeah.
So I will likely continue tracking my time the way I have been. I now trust it a bit more since I have done the side by side comparison. I trust that,
Right.
okay, the way I'm doing it, again, that time blindness concern is fine. But going into the minutia of I went to get a hot chocolate or I was chatting to my colleague or whatever, I don't need it. It doesn't provide me any value anymore. So I would
Yeah.
not be including that. How about you? Like from an individual business perspective, are you going to change how you do it?
It's interesting because I don't, as I said, I don't normally track my time. There is a very important VIP project I'm working on this year with deadlines and stuff that I have committed to. I it didn't show up at all in the week. Even though it's like my giant big goal, like I send it to my accountability buddy every morning, and yet there was no time against that project. So yes, I am now tracking my time against that one particular project. And look, to be honest, on my side, I suppose it's important for me to see the fact that I'm taking the breaks, that I am not working all the time, that I'm actually working less than I feel I am. Because, again, from a burnout prevention perspective, it's good to see that. It's good
Mm,
to see that I'm taking those breaks. And so, to your point, I think when it comes to time tracking, it's always asking, like, what's the outcome that you want to achieve as a result of it? Like, is it that you're new in your role and you want to build confidence that you're spending your time in the right way? Is it that you're overworking and you want to see what's causing it? Is it that you're concerned with your work life balance and you want to kind of, again, check the hypothesis, the time blindness thing? Is that a reality or is it just perception? So it kind of goes back to it. But yeah, for the VIP project, I am tracking the time. We'll see at the end of the year if it helps. Yeah, it all remains to be seen. Very top secret now at this stage, but yeah, it's all good.
I know what that project is, so I'm surprised it didn't come up the entire week.
But I'm human, like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean. I'm human, and just like everything, like if we're not focused on it, it can't slip. So that's why time tracking is good. So like, yeah, again, it depends on what you want to get out of it, though. Absolutely, yeah.
yeah. So I think, if you had someone come up to you tomorrow, would that just be your reaction? You know, hey, should I track my time, Niamh? Is it just what do you want to get out of it?
Yeah, it would be what do you want to get out of it. I would also ask them what else are they tracking, because, again, you can kind of fall into a state of hyper awareness where you're tracking your step, you're tracking your sleeps, you're tracking your calories, you're tracking your time, you're tracking your everything. And it's kind of like a hyper vigilance around everything. which can be quite stressful and not so good for our well-being.
Mm.
So again, I just be kind of asking them to focus on one thing at a time, whether that's a work goal or a personal goal. Because again, in the past, I would have tried to track them all because I love data. Like
Yeah.
I love apps, I love tech. So like I would have fallen into that trap just because I was totally curious. So that can get quite overwhelming. So I'd ask them what they want out of it, what else they're tracking. And then ultimately, to your point, what level of detail do they need to go to, and just do the minimum viable tracking. Because like there's enough going on in life not to be, tracking how many times you make a cup of tea in a day,
Very true.
Yeah. So look, I think for people listening, that's the main takeaway. Also, I think just the fact that we both did pen and paper, that we kept it simple, was interesting, worthy to note that like it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to do a whole week. You could do just a couple of days. If you see the trend, if that's enough for you to take action, then don't feel like you have to complete the week just because, the week is a set period of time that we go by.
Yes.
It's time tracking. It's not weekly tracking or monthly tracking. So just do it as long as it's serving you. And look, we will put a few links to maybe some trackers in the show notes if people are interested. But I'd say just keep it simple and let us know. Let us know
Yeah.
if you end up tracking your time. Like, we're both on LinkedIn. The old Better Workday on Instagram, Better Workday podcast on Instagram is up there. Drop us a message. I check it a couple of times a week. There'll be no instant replies now, to be fair. But we'd love to hear. Like, do you know what I mean? And does anyone have any other, really good ways of time tracking that we haven't discovered yet?
Yeah, 100%. Again, we are in some ways quite very similar minded. So I'm very curious to see if someone else has another way of doing it that makes more sense.
Well, to be fair now, Trish, we are sisters.
It is very true.
we're competing with our notebook collections. So look, we'll wrap it up for this week. I hope that you listening found this helpful. If you've been considering tracking your time, I hope this gives you some insight into what it looks like and what you can get from it. And we'll see you in the next episode. Talk to you then.
Bye.